It's Sarah, and welcome to my crochet channel. Today's video, we're going to be making a striped washcloth, and we're also going to be talking about Red Heart's brand new Scrubby Smoothie Cotton yarn. Now, it's a 3-ounce skeins, which is 131 yards, and it's a wonderfully soft cotton, and it's also quite durable. It's a great standalone cotton, and it also is great as a companion to the Red Heart Scrubby yarns. Now, the Scrubby washcloth originally was released as my candy striped washcloth, and it's the same pattern. The only difference is I'm showing you how to make it in some different colors, and also gives us a chance to update that video. Now, this one is stitched in a purple lavender variegated with some cream stripes, and then we use the variegated for the trim. This one is stitched in a variegated with some solid blue stripes, and I use the blue for the trim. And so you can use solids or variegated or put them together. Another one that I made is this red, white, and blue one. I did it exactly the same. Only difference is I used 3 colors within the stripes and then added a blue trim. So the pattern has lots of possibilities for lots of different ways to make different colors of washcloths. Now, you can find this pattern on my blog, and I'll put that blog link down in the notes underneath this video. Now, if you don't have the Scrubby Smoothie, you can make this pattern with any cotton yarns that you have on hand. I love this cotton, peaches and cream, sugar and cream, any cotton that you have on hand that is a number 4 thickness, medium weight. All right, so I'm going to be using the variegated yellow. I'm going to be using a solid white and a solid lemon yellow. You're also going to need a crochet hook that is an H8, which is a 5.00 millimeter crochet hook. You'll need a needle for weaving in your ends, and of course you'll need a pair of scissors. The first thing that we need to do is make our slip knot, and then we're going to chain 31 chains. And I do recommend that you chain this first initial chain a little bit loose so that the bottom of your washcloth isn't puckered up on you. So we're going to chain 31 chains, and I'm beginning with my solid yellow cotton yarn. Here is my 31 chains. We're going to begin stitching in the second chain from the hook. Here's the first chain, and we'll begin in the second chain. We're going to place 1 single crochet in the first 2 chains. Hook through, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through both loops. And we'll do that again in the next chain. The next 2 chains, we're going to stitch a double crochet. Yarn over, go in the next chain, pull up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, go through the first 2 loops, yarn over, and go through the second 2. And then we'll go and do the same thing in the next chain. So we have 2 single crochets and 2 double crochets, and we're going to repeat this all the way across our chain. So the next 2 chains are going to have single crochets. The next 2 chains will have double crochets. The next 2 chains will have single crochets. And then 2 double crochets. And by now you should be noticing it has a little bit of a waviness to it, because we did 2 singles, 2 double, 2 singles, 2 double, 2 singles, 2 double. And we're going to continue this across our chain. 2 singles, 2 double, 2 singles, 2 double, all the way across our chain. We're going to end up with 30 stitches because we chained 31 and we started stitching in the second chain from the hook. I finished this first row of 2 single, 2 double, 2 single, 2 double all the way across, and you should end with 2 singles, one in each of the last 2 chains. We're going to chain 1 and turn, and we're not changing colors yet. We'll be changing colors every 2 rows. Now for row 2, what we're going to do is we're going to put a double crochet in the singles, and we'll put a single in the doubles. We'll still be doing 2 singles, 2 double, 2 singles, 2 double, but we want to make sure that our singles are always in the double crochets and our doubles are always in the single crochets. So we chain 1. Chain 1 does not count as a stitch. We're going to yarn over and we're going to put 1 double crochet in each of those first 2 single crochets. So I put a double in those first 2 singles, and now I'm going to put a single in the next 2 doubles. And then I'll repeat this across. 2 doubles, 2 singles, 2 doubles, 2 singles. Making sure that I put my singles in the doubles and my doubles in the singles. And it sounds a little bit confusing, but once you get the pattern down, it's a piece of cake. And by stitching this way, you're getting a nice compact washcloth that has a little bit of rigidity to it because of the way it's stitched, and it just makes a nice absorbent washcloth. All right, so 1 single in the next 2 doubles, 1 double in each of the next 2 singles, all the way across our row. And then the next row, we're going to be changing colors. We're going to bring in our variegated. I continued going across, stitching two singles, 2 doubles, 2 singles, 2 double, making sure my singles were in the doubles and my doubles were in the singles. And that's the way row 2 should look. So what we're going to do next is we're going to join in our next color of yarn. I'm using a variegated. You can use any colors that you want, like I said. And I'm going to leave my first color of yarn attached because we're going to be changing colors every 2 rows. And we're going to trowel that up the side. When we're all done, we'll cover those with a row of single crochets. All right, so I'm joining my yarn in, chain 1, snugging everything down. And we're going to continue with what we've been doing. We ended with 2 double crochets, so we're going to stitch a single in the top of those 2 doubles. And then we'll just repeat the pattern that we've been working on. Let me get my yarn moving better. There we go. So the next 2 stitches are 2 singles, so we're going to stitch a double in each of those. The next 2 stitches are doubles, so we'll stitch a single in each of those. And we'll just continue with our pattern of 2 double crochets, 2 single crochets, 2 doubles, 2 singles, all the way across this row. And once you get that pattern down, this washcloth's going to just get done super duper quick because you'll have the pattern all memorized and you'll be able to whip right through it because it really is quite simple. Just making sure that you put the 2 singles in the doubles and the 2 doubles in the singles. And so you can see how that's working. I'm putting the doubles in the singles and the singles in the doubles. Moving right across our row. I finished working across that row, again doing those 2 singles, 2 doubles. I'm going to chain 1 and turn. And remember, we change colors every 2 rows, and so I'm just going to work back across this row the same way I did the rows before. So I see there's 2 singles, so I'm going to start with 2 doubles, 1 in each of the first 2 single crochets. Then I'll put a single in each of the next 2 doubles. And just moving right back across this row. 2 doubles, 2 singles, 2 doubles, 2 singles. So I have 2 rows of the solid and 2 rows of the variegated, and that's working out very nicely. I chose this yellow set, the yellow colors with the white, because yellow is my favorite color. Just a little FYI. All right, so I'm going to continue working across this row, and then I'm going to show you how to join back in the solid yellow so that we have even stripes of 2 rows each of each of our 2 yarns. So now we've completed 2 rows of the solid and 2 rows of our second color, or I'm choosing the variegated. Of course, you can use whatever colors that you prefer. And so now I want to join back in my solid yellow color, or if you want to join in a third color, that's fine too. I'm going to put my yellow over my hook and pull it through and snug that down. Now you want to make sure that you don't pull this yarn here too tightly. You want it to lay flat, but you don't want it to pucker, and you also don't want it to gape. When we come back through and do our trim, we'll stitch right over those sides, and they won't even be seen, and it will keep you from having to weave in every one of those ends. All right, so let's make a chain 1. Make sure everything's snugged down nice. There we go, I pulled it the wrong way. And we're going to turn. We're leaving our second yarn, or the variegated is what I'm using, attached, and we're going to repeat what we did on the last 2 rows. We'll start with a single crochet in each of those 2 double crochets, and then we'll stitch double crochet in each of the 2 singles and repeat across the row. And we'll do 2 rows exactly like we did these 2, only we're doing it in the yellow. So our stripes are going to be yellow and then variegated, yellow variegated, all the way up. And so that's the pattern of how it works. 2 singles in the doubles, 2 doubles in the single, working across the row, chain 1, turn, and repeat. The main thing to remember on this pattern is to make sure that your double crochet stitches are stitched in single crochets, and your single crochet stitches are stitched in double crochets. All right, so I'm just going to go right ahead and stitch this row and the next one. And then again, I'll show you how to change colors. I'm really loving how these colors are working. I completed those next 2 rows in the solid yellow, and now I'm going to join back in my variegated color, or my color 2. Again, I'm snugging that down, not letting that piece of yarn there pull too tightly and not letting it hang too loosely. Snug that down, turn, leaving our yellow still attached, and repeat. Single crochet in the doubles and double crochets in the singles. Stitching 2 singles, 2 doubles, 2 singles, 2 doubles, and again we're going to do this for 2 rows so that I again have 2 rows of my variegated color. And I know I already said this, but I'm really loving how this washcloth is turning out, and I absolutely love the new Scrubby Smoothie Cotton from Red Heart. It's soft and durable. I love that. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and stitch the next 2 rows exactly like we did this one. 2 singles, 2 doubles, 2 singles, 2 double, all the way across, making sure my singles are in doubles and my doubles are in singles. And I think you can see by now the nice tight pattern that it is. It's thick, it's absorbent, and it's perfect. I just love this pattern. So you can see I stitched 2 more rows, stitching exactly the same. 2 singles, 2 double, 2 singles, 2 double, making sure my singles are in doubles and my doubles are in singles. And we have 2, 4, 6, 8 rows. You need to stitch 20 rows total. So you'll have 10 color stripes, but you'll have 20 rows because each stripe is 2 rows. So you'll need to continue what we're doing until you've reached 20 rows. All right, so we're going to bring back in our solid yellow. Chain 1, and chain 1 does not count as a stitch on any of the rows. It's merely a turning chain. And we're starting with, there's 2 double crochets, so we're going to stitch a single crochet in the first 2. And then a double crochet in the next 2, and continue 2 single, 2 double, 2 single, 2 double for 2 rows, changing back and forth every 2 rows until you've reached 20 rows. Once you reach 20 rows, I'll show you how to tie off your colors, and then we'll stitch the trim. I finished my 20th row, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20 rows, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 stripes because each stripe is 2 rows. All right, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to cut off both of these 2 yarns, leave myself enough so I can weave those in later. And we'll just leave those for now, and we'll come back and weave those in. Now I'm going to join my 3rd color in that I'm using for the trim, and I'm just using a solid white of the smoothie, Scrubby Smoothie. We're going to join that in, snug that down, and chain 1. And if you'll notice on the side of your washcloth, one side has all the sides of the string where we carried it up. The other side does not. And we're going to begin with going down this side just because I want to get it out of the way and get it done with. All right, so let's put all of our strings out of the way back here. We're going to go right in the corner of this stitch, those strings out of the way, and stitch a single crochet. And then we're going to work our way down the sides of the stitches. Now we want to make sure we go around these strings, but also we want to make sure that we stitch in the stitches and not the holes. When I have a side where I have a double crochet, I'm going to put 2 single crochets. When I have just a single, I'm just going to put 1. And that will help it be nice and even. So here I have a string, and this end stitch is a double crochet. So I'm going to go around and stitch a single. Then I'll go to the bottom of that double, going around that stitch and stitching another single. The next one is a single, so I'll stitch a single. And you can see how that makes it nice and even. So where I have a double crochet, I'll stitch 2 singles on that end, going in the double crochet and around that extra loop of yarn. And then where I have a single, I'm just going to stitch a single. And we'll work our way down the side of the washcloth like this. Make sure that I'm grabbing around, or I should say stitching around, those loops that were left. There we go. I just want to show you, see how we got a nice even row of single crochets, and you can't tell where the loops were. And I like to do this side first just because, like I said, I want to get it out of the way and get it done with. And then once it looks really pretty, I can move on to the other sides. All right, so I'm working down the side, trying to get nice even stitches. Now the reason I like to try to go in this stitch is if I were to go into the holes between, I'd have a bunch of little holes across the side. It doesn't look bad. It's not really a problem. It's just I would prefer not to have those. Occasionally we may have to stick one in there, but I really try not to. I like to go in the stitch itself. All right, so now we're working down towards the corner. Let's see if we can get in there. There we go. That stitch was a little snug. All right, I pulled up 2 loops. Let's do that again. There we go. And now I'm to the first corner, and we want to put 3 single crochets in that corner. And that's just going to help the single crochet trim just ease right around that corner nice and evenly. And so on the bottom, all we have to do is place a single crochet in each of those chains across. And so that makes it just a little bit easier in working across. So I'm just going to stitch a single crochet in each of those chains across, because this is where we began. And that's another reason you don't want your beginning chain to be too tight, because we don't want the bottom of our washcloth to be all puckered up. We want it to be nice and even and neat. All right, so I'm just going to work across till I get to that next corner. So I've worked across the bottom of my washcloth. I'm in the next corner. I want to make sure that I stitch 3 single crochets again in the corner, so that again it moves nicely right around that corner. And now we're going to work our way back up. We're going to do it the same that we did on this side. The only thing is that we don't have to worry about catching all those extra pieces of loops of yarn. And so we can just stitch, moving right up the side, making sure we're still stitching in the stitches if we can. And like I said, I like to try to put on the ends of the rows, if there's a double crochet, I like to put 2, and if it's a single crochet, I like to try to put 1. But you just eyeball it, working up, trying to keep it even and filled in. And if you're moving across and you see that you have too many or you don't have enough, you can always pull it out and start again. It's not going to hurt anything if you have to do that. I do it often because a lot of times I'm watching TV or the news or something while I'm crocheting. And I get more involved in the TV and forget to count my stitches or watch what I'm doing. But for the most part, I like to try to get it in the stitch, and if I have to go in a little hole, I will, but I really would prefer to go through the stitch itself. I just think it makes a better looking edge. Alrighty, almost to that next corner. Alright, so I'm in this last corner, and again I want to put 3 single crochets so that it lays nicely and moves around the corner smoothly. And now I'm on just this last row, and this is the easy part. We're just going to put 1 single crochet in each stitch across. Super duper easy. We're almost done. So I'm single crocheted all the way around the washcloth, and now I'm going to stitch 2 single crochets in that same stitch where I started, because there's already 1 single crochet. I'm going to join to the first stitch with a slip stitch. And if you want a hanging loop, I'll show you how to do that. But if you don't want the hanging loop, you can just tie off here. But if you want the hanging loop, we're just going to chain 12. And then we'll just come right back here where we started and join with a slip stitch. And then we'll go ahead and cut our yarn. Now we have a few ends that we have to weave in, but one really good thing about the way we did this is because we left our yarn attached on the side, we don't have as many ends that we have to weave in. Alright, so let me show you how we do that. Sometimes when you're weaving in with cotton, it can be a little bit different than with acrylic because it doesn't blend in as well. So I want to go ahead and weave this end in, and because it's where I added that loop, I'm going to add a few more stitches than I normally do. I'm just going to whip that around. I want that to stay on there, and when I hang it up to dry, I don't want it to come apart. Alright, and then I noticed I have this little hole here, and so I'm just going to use my needle to kind of close that up, and that happens sometimes at that corner. So if that happens to you, go ahead and just close it up with a couple of stitches. Now to do a basic weave in, what I do is I go one way with the yarn, trying to go through stitches, not holes, and then I go up a stitch and turn and go back where I came from. If I have enough yarn to do that again, I will. And if I don't, I'll go ahead and tie it off. The weave in is very important with cotton yarn. And I always say, try not to make knots if you don't have to, because knots can come out in the wash and can come undone. And weaving in usually doesn't. And you might occasionally have to reweave it in, but usually you don't. Alright, so here's a yellow one. I'm going to try to stick with the color of the yarn. I'm going to go one way, I'm going to go up a stitch or two, going through stitches and fibers of the yarn, weave that in. But you can see why I wanted to carry the yarn on the side and not have all those ends to weave in, because my goal is to work smarter, not harder. Now I need to take a couple minutes and weave these last few ends in, but this is our washcloth. It measures about 8.5 by 8.5 inches, and it's just the perfect little washcloth. And I have to tell you, I love how this looks. It almost looks like a gingham, doesn't it? So that's our striped cotton washcloth that we made using the Red Heart Scrubby Smoothie.